Hi, everybody. It's Ashley of Day-to-Day Social Work. I am a private online tutor, and I specialize in assisting people to pass the license exam in social work on the master's and bachelor's level. You can find me online at Day-to-Day Social Work on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So I wanted to make a video today for Sunday Social about domestic violence. I know that October was Domestic Violence Month. October was a long, crazy month for me, so I wasn't able to get around to making any videos for October. And so I'm doing it now. Better late than never. But also, of course, domestic violence happens all year round, not just in the month of October. So this video will serve its purpose no matter when it's posted. So I wanted to do domestic violence because, like I said, it is an issue that's year round. It affects everybody, women and men, younger people, older people, children, adults, everybody. And so I wanted to make sure to use some resources that I found online and also just my personal work experience and life experience as well when talking about this topic. So before we get started, I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of, hang on, let me turn this phone off. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of the 75-day pre-recorded tutoring series. It is currently $95 for the 75-day access to 16 videos, over 190 questions being thoroughly reviewed over about 13-hour period. It's currently on promotion until through December 31st, 2020, and the rate will go back up starting January 1st. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that you need to get that tutoring series as soon as possible if you want to get it for only $95. The regular rate is $175, and I'm not sure what the rates will be starting in January, but it will be a little bit higher than the $175. So also, I have been approved to sit for my license exam. So as you may know, I have finished my 100 supervision hours and my 3,000 hours of contact with clients face-to-face. And now I'm eligible to sit for my advanced license for clinical independent practice. So I probably will be taking that exam very soon, and I will let you all know when I pass it. So back to the topic for the evening. Domestic violence. So just some quick facts about domestic violence. Like I said before, we know that it impacts everyone. Nobody is exempt from domestic violence, even if you think you have the greatest relationship or you think that it can't happen to you because you are in a certain economic or socioeconomic class or status. Happens to anybody and everybody. Well, not everybody, but it can happen to anybody, and it can happen to everybody, quite frankly. And then also, we know that on average, it takes a person in a domestic violence relationship up to 7 attempts before they are able to fully leave the relationship completely. And so what got me to thinking about doing this video was because I've been working with a family who I'm trying to help escape from a domestic violence relationship. And, I've worked in a domestic violence I've worked in a domestic violence shelter before, and I've also worked as a victim advocate at a police department. So I have a lot of experience working with clients who are going through domestic violence situations. And so as I was helping my client come up with resources, I thought that I should go ahead and get this video out while I'm in the actual act of helping someone. So the first thing I want to show you all is the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE. And that is for, it's 24/7, 365 for anybody to call who's experiencing any kind of domestic violence in their relationship. They also have they launched a special program, I guess, to respond to the unique needs of teens and young adults. It's called Love is Respect, was launched in 2007. And it says, through Love is Respect, the hotline provides direct peer advocacy 24/7 to youth ages 12 to 24 by phone, 1-866-331-9474. They also have an online chat at loveisrespect.org, or by texting love is, all lowercase letters, to 22522. And all of their services are completely free and confidential. And just some other information, it says that they were first established in 1996 by the Violence Against Women Act. Also, you may have heard it being called VAWA, and supported in part by funding from the Family Violence Prevention and Services Act. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is the only national organization that directly serves victims of domestic abuse, their friends, and family. So they have highly trained expert advocates who are able to talk 24/7 by phone with anyone who is affected by physical, emotional, sexual, or financial abuse. And it says to date, which I'm not sure when this was printed off, but it says to date, the hotline has answered more than 4 million calls, chats, and texts from people seeking assistance. The hotline also offers an online chat service at thehotline.org that is available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. CT. The chat feature provides another lifeline for those who do not feel safe speaking by phone. So they have over 200 languages that they can communicate with people in. They do referrals to local and state resources, personalized safety planning, crisis intervention, information requests, and domestic violence education and materials. So it's a very good resource. And it also says on the back that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men 18 years and older in the United States have been the victim of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. So, this in itself is just a lot of good information without me even going, well, it's a lot of good information as far as a resource before I go into the domestic violence, power and control wheel, and that kind of thing. So, like I said, that's a very good resource. I'm going to put that information down below in case anybody needs it, or in case you know someone who needs it. That'll be there, and it'll be in the description box. So let's see, what can I say before I get into the power and control wheel? Like I said before, I've worked at a domestic violence shelter for a very short amount of time. I think it was probably like 5 or 6 months before I went and started grad school. So this was back in 2011, a long time ago, it seems. And I was over the HPRP grant. And so I went and inspected housing for people who needed to get back on their feet. It was primarily women. Like I said, I want to be inclusive because we know that men go through domestic violence as well. But I worked with mostly women. I don't think I've ever had a male client personally who has sought services for domestic violence. But also, actually, I think I may have when I worked at the police department as a victim advocate. So most of my clients at the police department were women who were either sexually abused or physically abused. But I do recall one father, now that I look back on it, one dad that I helped. But, so I'm not going to say for the sake of this video, we're going to say women because I definitely want to be inclusive. So I'll make sure to say women and men. But okay. So you may or may not have heard of the Duluth model, which is comes out of Minnesota. This is the power and control wheel. And so we know that domestic violence can be physical violence, sexual violence, financial abuse, mental and emotional abuse. So power and control, that is the root of domestic violence. So when someone wants to assert their power over someone and control them and manipulate them, that is the beginning signs of someone who is abusive. And we also have to think about, as social workers, the trauma. So we want to be inclusive of even the batterers, because as social workers, some of us work in and develop batterer intervention programs where they work directly with the person who is the abuser or the perpetrator or the offender, as as they're called synonymously, with the abuser. So we know that, like I said, there's physical violence, sexual violence, financial abuse, mental and emotional abuse. All of that goes hand in hand with domestic violence. And so back to the power and control. So when you think of someone who is an abuser, we as social workers, not all of us, but some of us think about what makes this person an abuser, like what caused them to become an abuser. And that is what our social workers who work in the batterer intervention part of things, that's what they focus on. They focus on the trauma from childhood. They focus on intergenerational trauma that goes from family to family, generation to generation, because such and such saw their mom or their dad abusing the opposite parent. And that's something that they grew up with. And so they then in turn become an offender themselves. And we know that that's not always true for everybody. So I want to make sure I put that out there because I know a lot of people need to hear that. Not everybody that grows up in a domestic violence home will become an abuser or a victim. So we just want to make sure we keep that in mind. But for the sake of this Sunday social, we're going to talk about the victim and not the batterer. So if any of you are experts or have run any batterer intervention groups or facilitated any of those groups or anything like that, and you have that expertise and that knowledge, then please reach out to me. My email is below so that we can feature you to talk to us about that part of it. So part of power and control, we know that the abuser uses coercion and threats. They use intimidation. They use emotional abuse. They use isolation. They minimize, deny, blame. They use the children. Here on this power and control wheel, it says they use male privilege, and then also using economic abuse. So just some examples of those: using coercion and threats, making and or carrying out threats to do something to hurt, threatening to leave the other person, threatening to harm themselves. If you leave, then I'm not going to be able to live without you. If you leave, I'm going to do this to myself. I can't see myself living without you. Trying to guilt trip the person into staying with them and being with them. That's definitely manipulation and a form of power and control. Also to report the other person to the authorities, to DSS, as we call it here in South Carolina, Department of Social Services. So that's using coercion and threats. Well, if you don't do this, then I'm going to call and make a report to DSS because you didn't feed the children 2 times last week or you were late feeding the children and I told you had to feed them at 5 o'clock, but you didn't feed them until 7 for whatever reason. Also, using threats and coercion to make the other person drop charges and making them do illegal things. So an example of that would be if your partner is a drug dealer, or if your partner is lazy and doesn't want to work and doesn't want to make their own money, and they use you to sell drugs, to sell your body, to do other illegal things. And so they're using that power and control over you, and they're threatening you to do certain things as a method of power and control. So then also using intimidation, making her afraid by using looks, actions, gestures, smashing things, destroying property, abusing pets, and displaying weapons. Now, all of that I've definitely seen and heard. When I was in undergrad, I majored in criminal justice. I actually minored in criminal justice. My major was sociology. And so one of my criminal justice classes required us to go to general sessions, which is court. And we would just have to go and observe and see how things went. I think it was, can't remember the name of the class, but it had something to do with the courts. And so I definitely have been in general sessions a lot when I was in undergrad, just observing cases and that kind of thing. And so when you think about intimidation in domestic violence relationships, these are, like they said, the main examples. Making someone afraid by using gestures, actions, and having certain looks. And so when you go to court, and even when I was a victim advocate, I would go to court a lot with my survivors, as I called them. And also there's a delineation between a survivor and a victim. And some people prefer to be called a survivor, while others would, I don't think they would prefer to be called a victim, but they don't see anything wrong with being called a victim because that's where they are in the process of healing and leaving the relationship. But yeah, so I mean, and everybody knows what it means, or I won't say everybody knows, but that look that someone can give you. And I mean, that look is just, I think, universal. And it's not necessarily always tied to violence, but it's that look of, better, or if you don't stop doing this, then this will occur. It's just like with parents and children. So if your child is in the grocery store acting up and you just give them that look where they know that they better straighten up, because if they don't, they're going to get a popping, or, they might get their toys taken away, or whatever kind of consequence may come along with the undesired behavior that they're displaying. It's the same thing in domestic violence. So you'll hear about people being in court and the victim, or the plaintiff, as they sometimes call them, or the petitioner is in the courtroom and they're afraid to look at the abuser because they are used to those looks and those gestures and those actions that they may get across to them to make them see and understand, like, you better not say anything, or if you say anything, then this is going to happen. So, people have gestures, whether it's, cutthroat, or what's another gesture I've seen? Can't really think of any, but that look, the side eye, or, just that stare, different kinds of looks and different kinds of gestures to let the person know that they better not talk, or if they do talk, that something is going to happen as a consequence. And then, of course, smashing things, that's definitely intimidating people. So, I mean, that's one of those gateway kind of actions that leads up to domestic violence. So sometimes the abuser will look at you and they will see how far they can push you before they actually commit the incident of violence. So they want to see how much you're willing to tolerate and how much you're willing to take. So they might start off by yelling at you. And, some people don't tolerate yelling either. So they see that as disrespectful. So if they start off yelling, then they see that you stay with them, then they say, okay, well, he or she's they're gonna say, if I do this. So then they start smashing things. So it's not directly hitting you physically, but it's intimidating you because they're testing. They're doing just a little bit more every time to see how much you're willing to take and how much you're willing to tolerate. So they're going to keep pushing the limit. So you might be in an argument with the person, and then they're upset and they're fussing and yelling and cursing and screaming, and then they want to up it a notch, and so they might take the flower vase and throw it against the wall. And of course, most people are going to be startled by that, but they're going to see, like, okay, so he or she stayed through that, so let me see what else I can do. And so it's a constant build up of different things to try to see what a person is willing to tolerate. And then sometimes, of course, it's not that build up. It's just directly, we are in an argument and now I'm going to punch you, or I'm going to kick you, or whatever it is. So of course we know that it's different for different situations. Destroying property is another thing, of course. Taking someone's glasses and throwing them, smashing them, stomping on them, doing whatever else, abusing the pets. Now, I learned a while ago that a person that abuses pets, or, kills pets and that kind of thing, that's a different kind of person. Like, that's That's one of the signs of someone who has deeper issues, of course, and also I think one of the signs of someone who may be a serial killer. But abusing pets to some people are like children, and so abusers know how you feel about your pet, and so they are going to also see how far they can push the limit. So they might do something to your pets and see if you're willing to stick around after that, and then at some point it escalates to actual physical violence against the person. And then of course displaying weapons is a big intimidation factor, and it's a big threatening gesture. So that's, I think, the ultimate, like, okay, we've done the smashing and the cursing and the yelling and all that, but now I'm gonna definitely take it up a notch and see, let you know that I mean business if you don't do what I say. Of course, using emotional abuse, putting the person down, making them feel bad about themselves, calling them names, making them think they're crazy, playing mind games, humiliating the person, making them feel guilty. And so, again, on this wheel, it says her on everything, but I will be using them and they and he and she as much as I can to be inclusive. Using isolation, controlling what the person does, who they see and talk to, what they read, and where they go. So isolation is huge. If the abuser can get you away from everybody else, that's higher chance for them to be able to control you and assert their power over you. They don't want you to be around your friends. They don't want you to be around your family. They don't want you to be around anybody who is a positive influence, who would try to help you to escape the situation and get away from them. Also, limiting their outside involvement and using jealousy to justify their actions. So that's a big one. If a person doesn't want you to go to work because they're jealous of your new coworker who just started working that happens to be a person of the opposite sex and they are attractive. So they might say, well, I don't want you to look at anybody else. I want you to only have eyes for me. I don't want you to go to work anymore. I'm just so jealous. And some people like to hear that. They want to hear that they can, that their partner is jealous of somebody else, kind of boosts their ego and makes them feel better about themselves. But that's definitely not a good thing all the time, because when someone is trying to use jealousy to justify their power and control over you, that's definitely manipulation. So that's another one. Then minimizing, denying, and blaming, making light of the abuse and not taking the concerns about it seriously. So if you are in a partnership with someone, a relationship with someone, and you're telling them, you screamed at me last night, you told me to shut up, and I really felt disrespected by it, and I don't appreciate it. I don't want you to do that again, or else we may need to break up. And so they may make light of the situation and say, oh, well, everybody gets mad sometimes. And yeah, I told you to shut up, but it's not a big deal. I was just upset. I was just upset. That's a big one. I was just upset. I was just upset. And so people use that as an excuse as to why they are justified in acting up and acting out. And so, making light of the person's concern is definitely minimizing and reducing how they feel. And nobody should do that to you in a relationship. Saying the abuse didn't happen, that's another one. I've seen people say, well, I didn't do that to her, and this is what really happened. And so they flip things instead of taking things for what they are and being accountable. Shifting responsibility for abusive behavior. So that's like, well, I only hit you because you kept talking to the guy that I told you that I didn't like, because in high school he played on the opposite football team and we were rivals, and I told you not to talk to him, and so it's your fault that I hit you, that kind of thing. And then, of course, saying that she caused it. Again, that's blaming. Using the children to make the person feel guilty about the children, using the children to relay messages, using visitation to harass the person, and threatening to take the children away. So children is a big one. And I really need to put together a video and a presentation on child witnesses of domestic violence. I've been meaning to do that for the last few years, honestly. So if you've been following for any amount of time, you know that I was a child victim of domestic violence, a child witness rather of domestic violence. And so the impacts of witnessing domestic violence between parents or spouses or significant others on children is huge, and it does not go away. It's a traumatic experience. It stays with the person for years, probably forever. Definitely into adulthood, depending on the frequency and severity and what actually happened. But so using the children to relay messages, personal, transparent moment here. My dad used to do that. My dad lived right down the road from us, literally. Like we could step out in the yard and see his house down the road. And in the summer times, I just remember we had to go and stay with my dad for like a week or 2 weeks or something like that in the summertime, the longest week or 2 weeks ever. And yeah, so he used to, and this is way back. Ugh, I feel old saying that, not way back, but this is back before cell phones and text messages and all that kind of stuff. And so he would handwrite letters, and he would have us walk up the road and give it to my mom. And then we would wait for her to respond if she was going to respond. And then, or she would tell us to tell him whatever. And then we would go back down the road, and then he would send us back up and down the road with messages. And he would question us about things, and it just was not good. And looking back on it as an adult, it was not good for the things that manifest in your adulthood that came from childhood. Is just crazy. But anyway, using visitation to harass her. So yeah, sometimes the opposite parent, and this says her, so excuse me, but sometimes the opposite parent will use visitation to harass the other parent, and that's because power and control. So they may not actually want to see the children. They might not want to see the children, but they're going to get the children anyway because they can use the children as pawns to kind of manipulate the situation and to harass and to stalk the other parent. And so sometimes I don't think people realize that that's what they're doing, but it is. And so when you get the children just because it gives you a line of communication with the other parent, that is not right, in my opinion. You shouldn't use children to do that, but a lot of people do. And it is definitely an assertion of power and control. Let's see. And then also threatening to take the children away. And that, of course, goes both ways, moms and dads. Then this says using male privilege, treating her like a servant, making all the big decisions, acting like the master of the castle, and being the one to define men's and women's roles. And on the flip side of that, using female privilege, I would guess, would be something like using the fact that most victims are females. When we think about society and how domestic violence victims or survivors are viewed, most of them are female. And so using that female privilege to kind of flip things when you, the female, are actually the abuser. So if the police is called or law enforcement is called, then you could play, the damsel in distress, even though you may actually be the aggressor or you may actually be the abuser. But at first glance, most people are going to think that the male is the abuser and not the female. And also, based on our society, we know that if a man reports that a woman is abusing them, sometimes people may not take it seriously. They might joke and laugh about it, but it's no joking or laughing matter. So we know that. And then using economic abuse. So preventing the other person from getting or keeping a job, making them lose their job. I've seen that where the abuser will call the person's job and keep calling until the job fires them, keep showing up on the person's job and just doing the absolute most. And it's just crazy because as I'm reading this, I'm thinking of all the examples that I've seen over the years with this kind of stuff. But anyway, it says making the other person ask for money, giving them an allowance. So they might work 40 hours a week and make their own money, but they can't decide what they're going to do with the money they earn. They have to give the money to the abuser, and then they get an allowance. Or they may not let them work at all and be 100% dependent upon them. And so you have to get an allowance from the abuser. Taking the other person's money, not letting them know about or have access to the family income. And so that's a big one. So this is the, like I said, the power and control wheel. And then on the back is the equality wheel. And I'm not going to go through this whole entire thing, but negotiation and fairness. This is equality. So this is what the relationship ideally should be like. Negotiation and fairness, non-threatening behavior, respect, trust and support, honesty and accountability, responsible parenting, shared responsibility, and economic partnerships. So just to name a few out of each of those categories. Seeking mutually satisfying resolutions to conflict, accepting change, being willing to compromise, listening to the other person non-judgmentally, being emotionally affirming and understanding, supporting each other's goals, respecting their rights to their own feelings, friends and activities and opinions, admitting being wrong, communicating openly and truthfully, sharing parental responsibilities, being a positive, nonviolent role model for the children, making family decisions together, making money decisions together, and making sure both partners benefit from financial arrangements. So that's that. Then we have another chart, which is understanding the cycle of violence. And in the middle there, you have denial. And then around it, you have the batterer, and then you have the victim's response in a few of those little sections. So this one, let's see, let me just pick out one. So of course we know that, and I have another wheel. I have a few of these wheels that I actually printed out. And I printed these out for a client of mine, which, like I said, made me want to come and do this video. But there are a few different wheels. There are a few different wheels, and they're all pretty much getting at the same point, to where there is the honeymoon phase, and then and I've talked about this before in other videos, so this is just adding on to that. But you have the honeymoon phase, and then you have tension, and then you have the violence. And so this is a new one that I found, and I actually found this on a website called the Ashley's Patience Projects, and it's ashleysPatienceProjects.com, and I'll put that below as well. And Ashley is spelled ASHLEIGH on this one, not like my name, which is LEY. But anyway, so this is one that I think is even better than the normal cycle of violence wheel. So this one, it says that, and I think for me, the way that it's numbered is a little off, but it says 1 is excuses. I explain away the problem, but I feel like that should be on the other end, but who am I? But anyway, so we're going to start with their number 2, which would be what I would think would be number 1, is the honeymoon phase. It's where everything seems to be great. You're getting flowers, you're getting dinner, you're getting candy and chocolates and donuts and ice cream and all the good things that I like. And so you get all of that in the beginning. You're getting time spent, you're getting taken out, you're traveling, you're getting gifts, you're getting conversation and affection, and you're being love bombed essentially. And then the tension builds. So there's something that kind of turns, and it could be an incident, or it could just be out the blue one day, but it's the slow turn into where you start seeing the person for someone you don't recognize. And so out of nowhere, you kind of feel like, hold up, something changed. And so you're still in it because you know that you just came out of the honeymoon phase and things were great. So maybe this person is having a bad day, or maybe they just don't maybe something happened at work or whatever. So you're kind of like, okay, let's see what this is about. But then it's not just a bad day. It's not just something happened at work and I'm just going to get over it after a couple days. It's continual. It's continuous. And so, you start feeling like you're walking on eggshells and you feel like you can't quite do anything right anymore. And there's always a problem and everything you say is wrong. And all these things are starting to happen. So that's the tension. And then all of a sudden, there's the incident of violence. And it could be something quick. It could be a long, torturous night. I've seen it go all ways. I've seen it be just, out of nowhere, someone punched the person in the face. Or it could be, I mean, working at the police department, I've seen a lot of stuff, long, torturous nights and people with their eyes so swollen, their contacts are stuck in their eyes and, meeting people online and thinking that they're one way, but then they actually turn out to be an abuser and a hell night of violence and just evilness. I've seen it all. But yeah, but according to this will, like I was saying, the one that I'm telling you about that I think is a good one. So you go from the honeymoon phase and then you turn into being routine. So everything is great. Like I said, we're in the honeymoon phase. And then in between the honeymoon phase and the tension building, there's that routine. So, okay, now we're not going to be traveling all the time, of course. We're not going to be going out to dinner every day, of course. We got to get back to reality. We have to get back to a routine. So we're not going to be getting flowers every week. It kind of wore off. But now we're in a regular routine of just, going to work. Yeah, we talk here and there. We don't text every day. We're not on the phone for 5 hours at night and all that kind of stuff. So we're in the routine. So then, according to this will, then there's the tension building. And then there's a trigger. So something has set the abuser off. So while you're walking on eggshells, maybe they like their clothes ironed with starch and they want a crease in their pants. And, maybe you ironed their pants and the crease is a little bit off. It's not right down the middle of the leg. It's kind of off to the side a little bit. And so that triggered the person. And so, you're not perfect. You didn't put the crease in the middle like they wanted you to. And so now that little bitty thing triggered this person, and then that set them off to, like I said, they're either cursing, yelling, throwing things, mad, smashing stuff, destroying your property, doing whatever, or they might the physical incident just may occur just like that. So the abuse occurs, and then that's when the other person, the victim's self-esteem drops because it's like, wow, this person really hit me. They really threw something at me or did whatever they did. And that's why I said I feel like the excuses should be at the end and not at the top, because why would you need to make excuses in the beginning when it doesn't make sense to me to have excuses and then the honeymoon phase. But anyway, so then according to my logic, I would think after the abuse and your self-esteem is hit because of the domestic violence, then you start making excuses. So you get into this cycle because you start making excuses. Well, I do normally put the crease right in the middle, but, maybe I should have tried a little bit harder. Maybe I should have made sure to fold the pants a certain kind of way to make sure the crease was right. And so, I'm going to get it right next time. And if I don't, then I'm going to just try harder. So it's just excuses that the victim makes, and they explain away the problem. So then the abuser comes back through, and now we're back in the honeymoon phase. And, baby, I'm so sorry I hit you. I don't know what came over me. It was just, I like my pants a certain kind of way. And, I'm in the military and our uniform has to be just right. Or, I'm an officer and my uniform has to be just right. And, I'm the principal of the school and we had picture day and, we were getting audited at the bank and I had to look perfect. I'm so sorry. I bought you roses. I bought you flowers and, I'm going to take you out to dinner. You can get whatever you want on the menu and it's all about you. And so you're like, okay, like I thought it was just, he was having a bad day. And so then it's the excuses, it's the honeymoon phase. And then of course, you go back into that whole routine of just regular life. And then of course something else happens. So it's not the pants this time. This time it's the dishes. Well, you ask him or her, can you wash the dishes? I'm a little tired tonight. I cooked, I cleaned up, I had to get the kids to bed, and they had a football game this afternoon. I just really feel so tired. Can you just wash the dishes for me? Oh, so you want me to wash the dishes and I have to go to work and pay the bills and da 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 da. And so it's something else. And so just because you ask them to wash the dishes, it's a trigger. And now the abuse comes. And I mean, I don't want it to sound like cliche, but this is legitimately how it is. And I mean, it does sound cliche, but legitimately how it is. And I know that hopefully y'all can agree, and that you've also seen this too if you work with victims or survivors of domestic violence, and that I'm not just making this stuff up, and that you can agree with me. But yeah, so that's how this thing works. And as far as the sexual abuse, it's the, oh, you're cheating on me, and prove it. If you love me, then have sex with me tonight, and have sex with me 5 times out of the week and 2 times a day. And you might have fibroids, or you might have a problem, some other kind of problem, or you just might not feel like doing it. You don't have an excuse or a reason. You just don't want to have sex. Oh, well, if you're not having sex with me, then you must be having it with somebody else. You're going to give me sex tonight. And, then it becomes a sexual abuse thing, because of course we know that and even in marriage, a spouse can rape another spouse, even though you're married. And in some states, you have up to 30 days. And I think here in South Carolina, anyway, you have up to 30 days to report spousal rape, and it will stick, because there is a such thing as your spouse raping you. If you don't want to have sex and they're forcing you to have sex against your will and you feel violated. So, I mean, these are things that we need to know as social workers, that so that we can be prepared to help our clients. And I know the lighting in here is flashing in and out because I'm in the sunroom, and so there are 4 windows here, and the lighting is just, anyway. So it's dark some parts. I guess it depends on how I move. Yeah. So anyway, back to and I'm going to wrap this up, because like I said, I've set this thing to where I can only do 45-minute videos, and we're at 42 minutes. So the other parts of this, as far as like financial abuse, of course, like we talked about a few minutes ago, giving the partner an allowance, not letting them know what the family's finances are, making them work and then taking their paycheck, that kind of thing. And so on the Ashley Patience Project website, they have other examples of verbal, emotional, physical, financial, and sexual abuse. And I'll just go through a few of those. Verbal name calling, placing undue blame, an overly critical spirit, resentment. There's a whole list. So like I said, I'm going to put the link below so that you can go to it if you want to take a look at it. Let's see. And I'll just give some more of the financial and sexual abuse, because I don't think that a lot of people really talk much about that. I think most of the conversation is about verbal, physical, and emotional abuse. But again, financial abuse is forbidding the partner to work, jeopardizing the partner's employment by such tactics as excessive calls to work, like I said before, refusing to work yet contributing to expenses, demanding the partner sign over paychecks or denying access to liquid assets like mutual funds, coercing the partner to pay all expenses, including rent, food, and utilities, stealing the partner's property, taking credit cards and that kind of thing, running up the credit. And then sexual abuse is unwanted touching, somebody touching you and you feeling violated because you don't want to be touched, minimizing the partner's sexual needs, demeaning remarks about the partner's body, berating the partner because of their sexual history, using objects to perform sexual acts, withholding sex as a punishment, and just wanting to do sadistic stuff. So that's that for this Sunday social. I hope that you all will join into the conversation below and put some comments and let me know what you think and give me some feedback. So until next time, I will see you all later. Have